and I welcome you to the Market Growth Track of the World Aquatic Health Conference. To start off, I want to give you 4 very simple numbers. Just take a piece of paper and you can write them down if you want. The first number is 34. The second is 83. The third is 46, and the fourth is 10. So that's 34, 83, 46, and 10. And I'm going to tell you what they stand for. 34% of American children today, aged 2 to 19, eat fast food every single day. That's a CDC stat, and it goes across all income levels and all races, basically, except Asian kids eat slightly less, 34%. 83 million Americans are totally inactive. And what that means is they've been given a choice of 100 different activities that they can do, and they choose none of them. They do nothing in an entire year, 83 million Americans. 46% of Americans cannot swim. That is a stat that the Red Cross developed a couple years ago, and we actually confirmed it through some research that NSPF funded earlier this year, which you'll hear about through Doug Harrison in the afternoon. And 10, it's been 10 years since the residential swimming pool construction industry was at its peak, 2005. And we dropped dramatically at that point in time, and we really haven't recovered. So 10 years. There is something very wrong with all of those stats, but there's something very right that we can do about it if we work together as an industry. And that's what today's all about. That's what this track is all about, shaping the future through aquatics. Our first speaker today really doesn't need any introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways. It's Dr. Thomas Lachocki, and he is the CEO of the National Swimming Pool Foundation, of course, as he has been for 12 years. We have as our mission to encourage healthy living by increasing aquatic activity through education and research. Through our Certified Pool Operator program, we train tens of thousands of people a year and 400,000 people over the past 10 years or so in 93 different countries. We've also directed $4 million in grants given to various organizations to do 2 things, half of which to foster growth by demonstrating the benefits of aquatic activity from a health perspective. And many of those, some of those researchers are actually going to be presenting tomorrow in Playcorps' water immersion work. So put that on your radar screen to hear some of the results of that research. And the other half of the $4 million or $2 million has been given to prevent contraction, making sure that the water is safe and that drowning is prevented and everything else. And a lot of the tracks that are going on at this conference as well address that. So with that background on NSPF and what we're all about, and under the leadership of Tom, I welcome him to kick us off today. Thank you.
How are we doing? Sound okay? Not yet? How's that? Can you hear me in the back? Of course, great. Let me start. I'm going to make a statement. I'm going to give you a little background. We are at the front edge of the perfect storm to create growth for this field. And the consequence is people live in healthier lives, and for anyone who works in this field to ultimately have greater prosperity through growth. Now that sounds great, and that's almost, maybe some of you in your minds are saying, well, he's the CEO of the National Swimming Pool Foundation. Of course he's going to say that. So my goal is to help us not only understand that, but also to make sure that we feel that in our hearts. And I'm very fortunate to have speakers later that are going to go into a lot more detail to help you see that that reality and that opportunity really exists. But I want to start on the most fundamental and basic level. So each of you should have a piece of paper that looks like this, and if you don't, Dolores, raise your hand, she'll bring them. And we're going to take a minute, and I need you, and I ask you to participate in this. There are 15 things that human beings most value on this sheet of paper. And what I'd like you to do is, I would like you to cross out 10 of them that you're willing to live without for the rest of your life, so that you could keep the other 5. And I am going to wait 1 minute, and I need you to finish in that minute. Ready? Go. If there's something that's not on the list that you want to add, go ahead and add it in, but you have to cross another one off. My advice is if you happen to be sitting next to your spouse, you can put their name in there. Ten seconds. If it makes it easier, you could change your mind tomorrow. Be honest, don't copy off the other person. Who needs more time? Okay. All right, ready? Cross off 2 more. Oh, groan from the audience. 2 more. You may think, oh, this is impossible, I'm not going to participate. The reality is, we will all give up these things eventually. I'm just asking you to pick them. All right, anyone need any more time on the last 2? Okay. Now I'm going to do something that's weirder than this at presentations like this, but let me just ask you to participate because this will have an impact on how you see this this exercise and what it means. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to remember your 3. Shouldn't be too hard, okay? Then I'm going to ask each of you, all of you, to close your eyes. Don't freak out, no water balloons up here or anything. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Then I'm going to name 2 values. And if they're in your top 3, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. But let me do a test first to make sure everyone is capable of raising the hand. Will everyone please raise your 1 hand if you have one? All right. Yep. Hey, that's beautiful. 100% participation. Good job. All right, we're on a winning streak already. All right. So, and then after I name those 2 values, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and look around. Okay? So please, let's start with, you know your 3? All right, everyone close your eyes. If family or health are in your top 3, please raise your hand. Open your eyes and look around. Okay. To all those who wrote down sex, drugs, and rock and roll and just did that for the heck of it, that's all. It's okay. Just make believe the rest of the day is interesting, okay? All right. All right, so what do we validate? Why did I have that do? There's 2 really important conclusions I want you to take from that. Number 1 is those 3 things that were left, just by the groans that came in, those are things you should do something about today. So when you're on a break, text a loved one, call a friend, make sure that family is valuable, make sure you do something for your health today. And you should do that every day. Now, I'm guilty because I don't do that every day. And most people are guilty because they don't do that every day because we get busy in the world that we're living in, doing the things that we do, and we don't pay attention to the things we most value as human beings. So that's a bonus for coming to the World Aquatic Health Conference. It has nothing to do with aquatics, nothing to do with the National Swimming Pool Foundation. It has to do with you. Number 2 lesson. If we were to do this with another 50 people in another room at another convention, what are the odds that we would get the same answer? Probably pretty good, right? We're going to see the same thing. And I've done this probably a dozen of times, groups this size, 5 times this size. And you see the same thing every time. So what does that mean for the aquatics field? Let me, some of you work for manufacturers, different companies, health departments. Who wrote in their new product for their manufacturer? By show of hands, raise your hand. Oh my gosh, nobody, holy cow. Interesting. So what we have to remember is everyone else outside this room, our customers, everyone in the world, they're just like us. They don't give a, you fill in the blank, about pumps, filters, the CPO certification program, the World Aquatic Health Conference. They care about their family. They care about their health. Okay, so what does that mean to us? This is a picture of, and then maybe not only what does it mean to us, why don't we keep focused? How come so much in our field doesn't focus on family and health? This is a picture of the North Kaibab Trail on the northern rim of the Grand Canyon. I know some of the people that are coming to this are going to go to the Grand Canyon, they're going on the south rim, this is on the north rim, and what you see here is what you commonly see. I was here a couple years ago in August, and you see these people coming down on a mule. Now in August, the Grand Canyon, who's been to the Grand Canyon? By show of hands. Yeah, okay. Grand Canyon, we heard Rowdy making fun of teenagers. Grand Canyon's kind of like teenagers. You could read books about it, you could see pictures about it, your friends could tell you about it, but it's nothing like the real thing, right? They're different, but it's nothing like the real thing. So I decided to take a hike. My teenagers decided to sleep in. So I took a hike about an hour down, and as I was coming back, what I noticed was the whole time I happened to be looking down at the path and not looking at why I was here to be able to view the Grand Canyon. And the reason why is by August, there had been these things walking up and down this trail, and guess what they've been depositing on the trail, right? Well, you know, when you're doing this, stepping around things, this is not red because of the geological level here. It's kind of from the donkey droppings. And this is kind of like life right here, because what happens in life, what happens with our businesses is there's a bunch of, could I use crap? Is that all right to use crap? I'm not going to offend anybody if I do. Sorry. All right, there's a bunch of crap that you have to deal with. You know, we want to do this. I work at a YMCA, for example. We're trying to create healthier lives, but you know, you got to do the HR and the performance reviews and make sure your risk management plans are in process and all this other stuff. Make sure you have, if you're running businesses, you got your 401k plan. You have to have government compliance. You got to do your financial statements. You have to make sure all the HR things are working out. All that crap gets in the way of actually seeing what needs to be done. But when you stop and you look up, then you see why you're really here. And when you stop and you look up in the Grand Canyon, you see why you went there, to see this amazing magical thing. And the things we do in our career are to be able to be magical. So what I'm going to focus on is just 3 general focus areas for what we have to do to create growth. And I'll tell you a little more about what the National Swimming Pool Foundation is in that area, not because we're doing it and we're cool and we're great and all that, but because so many people are aligning with us and standing beside us to be able to help us do that. So you're going to see this image a couple times, and I'm going to focus on swimmers and more frequent swimmers. You don't hear that every day at a conference, I'm pretty sure, but that's okay, that's cool. I'm going to focus on, and here you see this nice little funnel. I'm a chemist by training, so you got a nice little funnel, a little Erlenmeyer flask here with a valve on the bottom. And just to represent, when you create growth, what you want to do is you want to create demand, right? And basic economics, if you create demand, right, you create growth. It is ultimately a very simple principle. Create demand leads to growth. When people are in the market, and they are in whatever the market is, in our case, using aquatics, whether it's residential or commercial, you want to invest in competence to be able to help retain them, because you don't want to lose customers, and you want to prevent the bad stuff, and you want to continue to make sure to promote the good stuff. Now, for the foundation, we focus a lot more time on this end and on this end, but of course, internally, we want to maintain our competence. Now, what I have on the top here is more swimmers and more frequent swimmers. You know, life is complex, industries are complex, fields are complex. It's hard to say, how do we change the world in a positive way? But the reality is, to create demand and thus growth, it's really pretty simple. Now, how to do it, more complex, but the direction for leaders is very simple. There are only 2 ways to create demand and growth for this industry. You get people who don't swim to start swimming. And you get people who swim a little bit to swim a lot. And you're going to hear more research from these fabulous colleagues later in the day to show you a little more about how that works and how that impacts buying decisions and things like that. But the reality is, jumping ahead a little bit. But the reality is, two ways to create growth. Anything we do to help those is good. Anything we don't do to support those things, bad. Now, Lauren mentioned inactivity, and some of the other speakers will give this. This is a slide showing 1990 obesity rates in the United States. Now, the reason I'm showing this, and I'm showing a few other data points, is to help establish foundation. There are mega trends, and when there's megatrends going on, huge changes in what's going on in populations in the US, Western world, and around the world, if you work in an industry that is contrary to the direction of a megatrend, you're in deep trouble. You know, the chance that you're going to be successful is really, really limited. However, if your business helps is aligned with a megatrend, then it's like a dream come true. Now, unfortunately, the megatrends are not so good for mankind, but pretty darn good for people in this industry if you look at it from a selfish standpoint. If you look at it from a non-selfish standpoint, the megatrends occurring in this world, we have a chance to turn around if they're bad things for mankind. So I'm going to show you a couple slides in a row. This is 1990 obesity rates in the US. So let me just point out something, because a couple things. So the colors that we show here, this dark blue is 10 to 14% obesity rates. Obesity rate is defined by a body mass index of greater than 30, or 30 pounds overweight for a person about 5'4". The light blue is less than 10%, and the white is, at that time, we didn't have data. When we skip ahead 10 years, we see in 2000, we see a new color, greater than 20%, and you see almost half the country greater than 20%. You have this fabulous state of Colorado, still a little bit lower, and then you see almost everyone is in this 10 to 15%. Skip another 10 years ahead, and you don't even see any blue on there. But what you do see is you see two new colors, 25 to 29%, and you see greater than 30%. And then when you go to 2010, I think I have the 2013 slide, you see another color formed, and that color is greater than 35%. No blue, and barely any 20 to 25% left. When you take a look at the change in obesity rates, which are the top slides, which I just showed you, all right, this is 94, 2000, 2010. And then on the bottom, you see a similar darkening of color. These are diabetes rates in the United States. When you look at obesity rates among children, I'm telling you, this trend is not going to change for decades. Because adult onset diabetes isn't even called adult onset diabetes. The obesity rates on kids under 10 have tripled in the last couple decades. And if those kids aren't active at a young age, they're not going to be active. The bulk of them are not going to be active at an older age. So the health consequences as a result of this are astronomical. I think it was in 2010, the estimates were that about 10% of healthcare costs in the United States is due to inactivity, and thus obesity and all the things that come along with people not being active. That number is not going down. It's going to continue to go up. So bad for society, kind of good for the direction we're going to be able to foster growth in our field. So what's happening as a result of that? Now, of that, but let me expand even beyond the U.S. How many people do things outside the U.S. here? Sorry, I got a spotlight. Okay, things going on outside the United States. I'm 53 years old, and when I was a child, it seemed, let's put that slide up. When I was a child, it seemed impossible that there would be obesity in Africa. Impossible. I couldn't even believe it. Well, this came out just about a year ago. This is a publication. The colors are a little bit different. You see where the U.S. is, just so for a color comparison. So U.S. and Alaska at 30 to 40%. This came out in 2013. Look here in Northern Africa. We have rates at the similar level, and even 20-30% in parts around the world. This was published in The Lancet last June. There has not been a country in the entire world where obesity rates have gone down in the last 33 years. This is a mega trend that is not going to go away. Now, what we do know is, what's the consequence of this? The consequence is this is, a $200 billion unnecessary expense in the United States. Well, unnecessary unless you're getting medical care and you want to stay alive. But no country, even the greatest, most economically powerful country in the history of the world, can sustain 30 to 50% of their population being chronically ill for 30, 40 years. And if I know that, I guarantee you our political leaders know that. Now, are they doing things about it? It's not showing up in the papers every day, but the fact that our First Lady focuses on activity is a step in the right direction. But the reality is, insurance companies, employers, and government are going to spend billions of dollars to encourage people to be active. And the people who don't become active, guess what's going to happen to them? I'm embarrassed to say this, they're going to die sooner and have a much more painful end of life than any of us would want for ourselves or for the people we love. But there's no escaping the math, and there's no escaping the megatrend. So when we want to be able to get more people living healthier lives, this aligns with one of society's greatest needs in the history of time. When you look at aging rates, and as the baby boomers approach retirement, here we are 2015 in the United States, there's about 47 million people over 65. You just go 20 years out, you're almost, not quite doubling it, 80% higher. Our society is getting older, and inactivity and age are tremendously powerful deteriorators of health. My mom's 87, and saw her last Christmas, and she said, "Tom, don't underestimate the power of aging. It's something we'll all experience." So some of you who struggle with this value decision, we're all going to give up all those eventually. So what we could do to help preserve other people and what they value is critical and absolutely fundamental to what we do. Now, people aging, people being in activity, also people aging, mega trend, and when people get older, there's only so many things they can do to become active when organizations are flooding billions of dollars to help people become more active. Now, when you look at our different values that we have, you see, I talked about health and family, but there are other things in these top values that very much rely on our industry. You look at the water park industry, what's been happening with adventure. You'll hear health benefit talks here talking about a person who's older who exercises in the water is less likely to fall when they're on land, and their balance is improved. So they're more prone to be active, and they're more prone to maintain their independence through their later years. You look at friendship and the opportunity of people interacting in a social environment, and of course the fun of water. The Swim Today campaign from USA Swimming is all about the fun of water and the way people feel about it. Now, we go through a little bit of data. You're going to hear more about this either in the Health Benefit Tracker later this afternoon. Dr. Stephen Blair, who is going to be presenting tomorrow, I think actually this afternoon and tomorrow, is one of the leading analysts in science looking at megatrends. He was the CEO of the Cooper Institute, where they had 80,000 people's health data over as much as 40 years. And a few years ago, the foundation funded a research project with him where we looked at mortality rates, how quickly people, or the percent of deaths within that population. So, for example, if I went there 20 years ago, I went there now, that's 20 years, not dead. I don't think so. Pretty sure I'm not. You went through 20 years, so that's 20 years of lifespan. So they looked at the number of deaths per 10,000 hours in the study, and they looked at mortality rates. And from a swimming standpoint, they found that swimming, relative to sedentary walkers and runners, that the risk of dying is about half that of even these people that are active in these other ways. Now, Blair will be here, and if you want to ask Dr. Blair, and I've asked him this himself, and if he was standing here, he'd say, this data seems unreasonably high, but the data is the data. Part of the weakness of the data is that out of the swimmer population, not that many people died. So a couple more people died, the numbers changed, but the good news is, out of the swimmer population, not that many people died, right? So is swimming this much better than these other things? Yeah, probably not. Is swimming, do people live longer as a result of being active in the water? The likelihood is yes. Probably one of the most powerful and important studies ever done in our industry. Dr. Becker will probably talk a little bit about this in the health benefit tracks, and you'll probably read about it a little bit in the Water Immersion Works. When you have a person standing in water up to the shoulders for an hour, and just due to physics and physiology, you force more blood to your central organs because you have more pressure deeper in the water. Your heart has to do a very simple thing to be able to accommodate that. More blood being forced back to the heart stretches a little more. The key to exercise, anyone who goes to the gym, you'll see these heart things, maximum heart rate by age, right? And what does maximum heart rate do as you get older? The maximum number of beats per minute. It's almost linear. As we get older, the number of beats we could have in a minute go down. Well, what does that mean? All right, if you're in your 50s and you exercise and my maximum heart rate, so I don't know, 135, 140, something like that, that's all the beats I get. The key to a healthy heart is not just how many times it beats, but how much it can stretch so it pumps more blood with every beat. So when you see a Rowdy Gaines, who's still an amazing swimmer, his heart stretches more than anyone else here. That's why when you ask an elite athlete, what's your resting heart rate? They usually say a number lower than normal people, right? And that's because their heart doesn't have to beat as much because it stretches more. So if you stand in water and you force more blood into your heart, and your heart stretches by about 30% on average, depending on age and the water conditions, you're getting heart exercise by standing there. The effect is not as good if you're not in as deep water, if you're in a hot tub, but the effect goes up if the water's hotter. So sitting in a hot tub provides cardiac exercise. And most people die from cardiac disease, heart attacks, right? People talk about the boating industry and all these other industries, and they're competing with our discretionary dollars. There is no industry that can say you could sit on your butt and you could be healthier. But no one's saying that. And we need to say that. All right, next. You'll hear more about this from Keith's story. This is data I stole from him. It's a couple years old now, so the numbers have changed a little bit. And this is leading aspirational activities, and I'll let him introduce all this more. But aspirational activities are not things people are doing, it's people want to do, right? I aspire to do this. They're not necessarily doing it. And they surveyed people at different age groups, at different age categories. And in 2014, in the study, they found swimming for fitness was number one. Now, all except for the 35 to 44 range. And the numbers have changed, but it's still, I think he was telling me earlier, that it's still in the top three in every category. And I don't know, I'm not sure why 35 to 44. I'm pretty sure there's no scientific basis on this. This is my hypothesis. Keith could correct me later on. This is about the age where your kids become teenagers, and maybe they're talking about running away from home, but what they don't realize is the parents want to run away from home too. Okay, so maybe not you guys, maybe that was just me. Okay, all right, so we dropped down, and hiking came up as number one in that age group. So, creating demand. Understanding the benefits of immersion in water is critical to be able to help more people come into our field. So, and it's simple. More swimmers or people swimming more. Now, when I use the word swimming, there's a lot of debates in our industry. Well, what does that mean? A person could swim 50 yards. They could, tread water for, a minute in the water. To me, I'm using the most general term for swimming. Even a person getting in a hot tub, to me, I'm using the word swimming. Right? They're obviously not swimming, but they're using water and they're getting in the water. Maintaining, oops, going a little too fast. Go back, sorry. Maintaining the market, we have to make sure that people work in our field are well educated, they do what they do well. Now, on the bottom, we want to make sure that we're minimizing contraction. Let me just ask, maybe it's a rhetorical question, but you can give me feedback. If a family has a child who drowns in a swimming pool, do they become advocates for aquatics or not advocates for aquatics? Well, some of them do, but the majority not only become not advocates, but they spread, understandably, fear and propagate fear potentially for generations to come. USA Swimming funded research pointing out that, and once a family is not a swimmer, for whatever the reason, there's only about, I think, 13 to 15% teach their children to do it. But the reality is, families who lose loved ones in an environment don't become advocates for it. It's the rare exception where they say, but we're going to teach our kids how to swim as a result of that. It's the exception, not the rule. All right, so let me go over and just refresh on a few things. This industry has unique benefits that completely align with the benefits that mankind needs most: improving health, maintaining health, that almost every single human being on the planet values most: family and health. And unfortunately, we don't have enough people looking up. Now, this is to be able to see that and to be able to communicate that to people around the world. Now, this is in Colorado Springs. This is called the Incline. It's a hike. You see these railroad ties. It goes from about 7,000 feet to 9,011 feet. And I went on it the first time. I've lived in Colorado Springs 12 years now, about 11 years ago. And my good friend, Kara, invited me to do this. And it's when I just started getting back and running. And I said, sure, why not? Let's go do it. So we hike up the incline. It takes, I think, it's the Olympic Training Center is in Colorado Springs, so there are Olympic athletes up there, military people. I think I heard Apollo Ono did this thing in like 20 minutes or something like that. But, if I break 50 minutes, I'm like, woo, I'm an Olympic athlete, in my own mind. And so when you get up, the problem is, this may not seem like it, but this is super steep over here. So you're literally taking steps up almost like this, okay? And you're doing that for, 30, 40 feet, and then it grades out a little bit. So usually you don't come back down this, because like one slip and fall, and it's bad, really bad deal. But if you make a left-hand turn when you get to the top of the incline, there's the bar trail. Now, the bar trail will come back right to the bottom of the incline if you go left. If you go right, you can go all the way to the top of Pikes Peak, which is just an absolutely fabulous hike if anyone ever wants to do it. But we're coming back down. So we get to the top of the incline, we make the left-hand turn, and Kara is in front of me, and I let her go first because I'm a gentleman. And it's still pretty treacherous, and there's a lot of things you could trip over. It gives me something soft to land on. Just kidding, just joke, make sure you're paying attention. Okay, so I let her go down, and as we're going down, it's almost easier to trot because it's steep enough that walking is almost harder. So we're trotting down, and the whole time we're going down the hill, I'm noticing the natural beauty of Bar Trail. There's beautiful trees and rock outcroppings. But every time as I'm looking up and I'm noticing Kara on the way, her eyes are glued down on the trail. And it was October, it was fall, the aspens were turning yellow, red, white granite outcropping, just absolutely fabulous. So we get to the bottom and I asked Kara, I said, Kara, I noticed the entire way down, your eyes were glued on the ground. You didn't see any of these things that happen. It was just beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And she told me, Tom, if you have wiped out on this trail like I have, you'd be keeping your eyes off the natural beauty and keeping it down on the path. And anyone, as they've come to adulthood, as we work in our industry, we've fallen down on the trail and we've been hurt in some way. And as a result of that, our eyes normally look down at what's going on in our business, what the other guy's doing. We lost an account to them. How come our membership isn't up? What's not, how come our website traffic isn't doing as well? We're caught up in the things that are happening that make our eyes go down as human beings. But when we look up, we see what we do has an impact on people's families. It has an impact on people's health. And it's simple. We just have to get more people to become swimmers and get more people to swim, who are swimmers, to swim more. And that is why we're relevant, and that is how we can create growth. Lauren, it's back to you. I think we have time for some questions. How are we doing on time?
We have plenty of time.
We have plenty of time, okay.
Yeah. Does anybody have questions for Tom?
Tom, is it possible to get some of those slides so maybe we can put them on our website or something?
You bet.
That way, we all can promote that, through our own little venues.
You bet. I'd be happy to do it,
Great,
Joe.
thanks.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any questions for
If
Tom?
you don't have questions, I'm going to have to talk about the National Swimming Pool Foundation. So
Hey, Tom, why don't you talk a little bit about the Colorado CEO Forum that you attended and
Right.
what the economists might have told you about things?
You bet. Okay, so there, I had the chance to go to a CEO forum in Denver just a couple weeks ago. There are about 400 CEOs from the Colorado area. And the chief economist, Brian Bilyeu, who's just a super brilliant guy, talked about a lot of mega trends going on. Now, economically, the likelihood is there's a lot of noise in our world, and you're hearing about noise in the Middle East, not to trivialize the challenges going on there. You hear about the Ukraine, you hear about what's going on with Russia and Crimea, but the reality is, the economic reality is the United States economy is strong. We've been in recovery for 6 years, and we are going to continue to grow certainly for the next 3 years. 16, 17, 18 are going to be terrific years. His advice was invest now, focus on growth now. Now in 18 to 19, the projections that they have, and they're pretty good at their projections, all right, don't invest your entire portfolio in what I'm telling you here at the World Aquatic Health Conference, but the likelihood is that there's going to be a small recession in the 1919 time frame. Nothing like the one we went through. But in 2030-ish time frame, okay, now we're talking pretty far, there's going to be another massive recession like the one we just went through, and probably worse. There's no escaping economics, and unfortunately, many of our leaders don't get it. You cannot lend, you cannot borrow, and overspend as a government and expect economic prosperity to last forever. So we're going to bite the bullet, we're going to do it probably around 2030. There are things that could have an impact, that could change the timing, of course, but there's no escaping the inevitable, and economics always wins. Now, relative to people, how many people work in like public pool areas here? Hard time seeing. How about residential? Okay. Today, in the United States, people have more discretionary income than they have in decades, according to Bilyeu's. People, as a result of the recession, they save more, especially the wealthier subdivisions. And Doug may be able to speak to this more intelligently than I can later, so listen to him. And if he disagrees with me, don't pay attention to him. Listen to me. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, Doug. No, so especially the wealthy have been putting money away, and they have money to be able to buy pools. Also, lending is getting easier. You're hearing, you just pick up almost any Wall Street Journal any day, and you see that people are more prone to be able to give money to be able to people invest in either buying a residential pool or participating in a club or going on a vacation to a fabulous place like this where they could get in the water. So the money's there, and if they don't have the money, they have collateral that they could use for lending to be able to grow this industry. So economically, we are in a perfect place also. What else? Anything else? Questions? All right, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to.
1 second.
I got it.
Tom, wait.
All right, here we go.
No, Tom, it was just an observation because when you look at the philosophy of design and construction in Europe, it's 180 degrees off what we do here in the United States. And Genesis does work in schools in Europe. What's interesting is wellness is the primary function of the European design market. In fact, when we do schools in Germany, the German Trade Association is named wellness. And this was going to be part of the conversation we were going to have with Lauren at the end of the day, but the United States is all about outdoor living. Canada is the crossover between those two philosophies, where they have a desire to have the outdoor living, but they're also sympathetic and receptive to the wellness theory more so than we are here in the US. And to support that, when the Savorskys did the first really beautiful, highly refined wellness spa in North America, it's in British Columbia, it's not in the US. So I think we can learn, and certainly we have, on how to integrate those two things. So just as a point.
You know, culturally, Skip, you know, the United States is great. I'm proud to be in America. Do we have any Europeans in the audience? Okay.
David, I'd like to make a comment though.
Oh.
I am
Okay.
from British Columbia, and can everybody hear me without this? I'm sure they can. I work in Canada, our philosophy is we have a lot higher taxes, and we put a lot more money into our swimming pools and recreation centers. We don't look at making money. We have budgets to spend money. We certainly have to make a small amount, but we're looking at cost recovery instead of spending, or instead of making money, and I think that whole philosophy is what drives our recreation area a little differently than in the United States.
Yeah, I think the philosophy in the U.S. prior to the recession was very much closer to that government entities thought, hey, you know, taxpayers pay for this, they shouldn't have to. You could go to a pool for $1 a day when it takes, you know, to go see James Bond, you know, it costs you $10. God forbid you buy popcorn, right? And you're like, you know, I'm doubling the price. Economics and government, we have to be careful. That model works until bad times come. And then anything we could do to be sustainable financially, the better off we're going to be for any aquatic facility out there. But you know, America's a fabulous place. It's an amazing place. The history is, the accomplishments of the country are irrefutable. But our culture is more work hard. And when you interact with people from Europe, and we have Europeans here, they can refute me if they like. There is much more focus on family and being able to have quality time. It's not an accident that in Europe, you know, mostly everyone gets 6 weeks of vacation, and in the U.S., not too many people get 6 weeks vacation. Anyone in the U.S. get 6 weeks vacation? Okay. Anyone take 6 weeks vacation? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Point reinforced. Thank you. Other questions? Other comments? Am I fair on Europe?
Yeah, I think so. My experience of Europe, obviously, from coming from England, we're a little bit more like the US. But if you're going to France or you're going to the Netherlands, even the smallest villages have got what they call their club, and the whole social life of the village revolves around that. And they'll have tennis, they'll have swimming, and it's just really woven into part of the society.
Now, when I showed the Erlenmeyer flask, there was a spigot on the bottom, and I spent the bulk of my presentation on purpose talking about growth, because growth is something that we're at the beginning of the perfect storm if we can do it well and work together to make it happen. But from a contraction standpoint, there are factors that impact us from a contraction. And from a foundation, we're not only focused on the growth area, but also preventing contraction, because you don't want, once people are engaged in an aquatic activity, you don't want them going away. I'm pretty sure, and you know, I haven't done any market research on this, but I'm pretty sure that no one says, you know, honey, you know, the kids haven't had diarrhea in a while, let's go to the pool. Because, you know, last time we went that happened, or, you know, it's been a long time since I've had a rash under my bathing suit. Let's all go to the aquatic facility. You know? The bad experiences at aquatic facilities is something that we have to invest in competence to prevent. And there are a lot of bad things that can happen in water. We had the meetings about the Model Aquatic Health Code, and a lot of the conversation was reducing hazard, reducing hazard, reducing hazard. And you know what? Reducing hazard is important, but water is a hazard. You cannot eliminate all the hazard. So being able to take a look at preventing drowning, preventing illness, preventing chemical exposure, preventing entrapment, preventing injuries, preventing bad experience, just having good customer service. And of course, economics drives growth, right? This is the population that are aquatically active, and if the rest of the slide is the population that is not aquatically active, I like to think of them as the not yet aquatically active. There are forces going either way, and if these bad things continue, the likelihood is, even if we create growth, people are going to be falling out of the bottom of the funnel, and we can't let that happen. And of course, family health, ego, there is an ego aspect. I don't know if our speakers later will talk about it, but there's a gentleman, Lachocki, who is French but adopted American consultant, and he wrote a fabulous book. If you've never read this, it's really one of the best I've ever read, on the culture code. And creating a culture code is a word that represents something. It could be the product you're marketing, your company, etc. Well, the culture code for a luxury item, and many people think of a luxury item, pool in their backyard, are stripes. And if you're any military families here, right, more stripes means higher rank. So ego does play in. But the good news is, from a megatrend standpoint, we are humans, and we all have egos, and we all want to feel good about ourselves. And if someone could afford to have a pool in their backyard or be a member of a local club, that plays positively to our humanity. And it's kind of embarrassing to say, well, I got an ego and I want a pool because I want to look better than the next guy. And no one says that. Well, almost nobody says that. But that's the reality. So megatrends on health, megatrends on inactivity, megatrends on government, insurance companies, employers, paying people to exercise, ego, all are going our way. What else? Any other questions? Lauren, you have anything you want to add?
Any other comments? I did. I saw a headline, and you talked about the corporate world being more concerned with employee health and all that, and Target just announced that they're giving Fitbits to their 355,000 employees, and they're going to be tracking. In some ways, they're encouraging activity, movement, and all that kind of stuff. That's good for them, but it's also good for their bottom line, because then their insurance rates go down and everything else. So that's happening everywhere, and that's
yeah. So Target, what they did is they get everyone a Fitbit, I think, and then they create teams so you could kind of track or whatever the brand is that they gave. I think it was Fitbit, but
I'll throw one thing in.
Go ahead.
So I'm the Doug Harrison guy that's going to be talking this afternoon. I hope you come back at 1:30, and Keith's going to talk before me. He's even better. He wants you to come back too. But I just wanted to comment real quickly on your point about everyone just being so focused on working here in the U.S. And one of the big trends that we've actually been seeing, and I'm going to be talking about, is that the focus of keeping up with the Joneses and striving for more and more is actually really fallen off as a result of the recession. And people have turned inwardly, and they've turned inwardly toward their family as what really matters most in life. And the highest single category, other than travel, that they plan to spend on is around their home. Nice. So 2 other really valuable trends that are absolutely working in your favor.
Thank you, Doug. That's beautiful. So,
Thank you.
All right, so I have to be careful because sometimes I use words like crap and sucks and things like that. So please don't let the crude words get in the way of the point that I'll make in conclusion. The megatrends are going our way. Organizations are paying a fortune to be able to encourage activity. We just have to ride the trend and make sure that we're waving the banner of aquatics. And if we can't create growth, substantial growth over the next decade and a half, even with a little recession in 19, maybe going into 20, then we suck. I hate to say it. And I'm the CEO of the National Swimming Pool Foundation, which means I suck, right? And and we just can't let that happen. We can't let that happen. It's like the golden goose being handed to us, and society needs us. So please, let's find a way to be able to make it happen. You're going to hear some extraordinary organizations later this afternoon, this track that we're giving to from a Step in the Swim standpoint. Rowdy mentioned Swim to Win and Steve Little. Steve will be here and he'll speak about the program he's doing. Super dynamic guy, working with overcoming barriers in their county in California, where they are putting every third grader in a Learn to Swim program. Every third grader, which is just like fabulous. And they're looking at, they're building a facility right now to be able to have anyone who wants to learn to swim in their county can go there and they could do it. If they got $5, they got no dollars, they don't care. And working with Rowdy, that extraordinary man we heard this morning. And a few of the other programs, just terrific. Now, if you don't want to give to the Swim to Win or through our Step in the Swim program where we're funding these other programs, you know, we don't keep any of the money. We're giving more, so we're handling the administrative costs, plus this is part of our philanthropic giving to be able to do what the world needs, and of course, anyone in this industry benefits from. Then what I encourage you to do, if you don't want to give through us, that's fine, but give in your local community. Right? Give in your local community. You'll hear from Joe Lewis this afternoon with Angels of America's Fallen. And I don't want to spoil the surprise for people, but some people may not be here. But the average age of a child of a family who has lost a loved one who serves this country is 7 years old. And sometimes that lost life happens on American soil due to post-traumatic stress disorder or depression and suicide, and you know what that family gets when that happens from the government after serving in a war zone or as an EMS responder? Pretty much this. So now you got a 7-year-old that's one parent trying to make it and get that kid up to being a productive adult. So what they're doing is they're essentially adopting, right? Not legally adopting. They're adopting kids and saying, we will fund any activity you want all the way till you're 18. Now that's not going to create thousands and tens of thousands of swimmers, but you know what? Sometimes one makes a huge difference. So we're giving to them to be able to help fund people there. Larry Cornelia representing the Northeast Spa and Pool Association and their foundation sitting on the back table. They're making contributions also to that program and other ones. So if you don't want to give through Step and Swim, give somewhere. Now, I showed the funnel before. Why don't I pull that back up? And let me ask you a question. All right, so how many people work for companies here? Hands up, companies. How many people work for like nonprofits, aquatic type facilities, things like that? All right, thanks. Think about in your business how much you invest in maintaining market share. Salespeople taking market share from the other guy, your marketing budget, your website that supports your business, and put that dollar sign in your mind. How much are you spending relative to that number to do this? I think if we did an honest survey of everyone here, this number would be 99.9% of what people focus their organization's money on, and not so much on that. Some exceptions, you know, there's Learn to Swim program people here represented. I'm not saying you should spend as much here as we spend here, but I'm telling you the number that we spend here should not be this. It should be something, because we are the ones who will benefit economically while serving society. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to have, thank you. Appreciate it, thank you. Let's change the world, we could do it. You're going to see a couple fabulous speakers coming up, and we'll transition to them in just a few minutes.
Yes.